So talking about the early stages of the transformation, or even those companies that are a little bit ahead, it's almost a cliche, but if you don't get the fundamentals right, then you will pay later. So Junior is going to describe some of these fundamentals, and I'll hand over to you, Junior, to just first perhaps give us a brief introduction.
Hi, everybody. Sorry about the little delay there. My name is Junior Muka, and thank you, Sham, for just setting the scene there. Yes, I'm a data management professional. I work for one of the biggest or one of the largest South African retailer. I have one foot in academia and one foot in industry. And yes, basically that's about me. I'm very passionate about data management in general, as you can see on this slide. I have specific interest in data governance, data quality management, big data architectures, and advanced analytics. So yeah, absolutely. That's really about who I am. The story I'm going to be telling today is really drawing from my experience in industry, like Sham has mentioned, there are certain fundamentals that we absolutely have to have in place as we all work through this data journey, which can be a very long journey at times, and can be a lonely journey if you're not doing it right. So in terms of how to get started on your data journey, the key point that I've always insisted on our businesses or with our businesses as we get them along a journey, or as we get them started on a journey, is to start with the business data. And that is usually within a business context, because for my experience, I work for a retailer, so that's our context. For many of you in the room, it's banking, and it has to start with identifying that specific business problem that you are trying to solve. And how you go about, identifying that has to start with your strategy. And I think Sham mentioned that as well. The business strategy. What are those strategic objectives that we are trying to achieve, which at the end, data is basically just trying to support. So an example of this could be, whether you're in banking or a retailer, it could be that you want, for example, to double your online banking business in the next 3 years, or whatever the strategic objective is. For that, there may be a lot of initiatives that you need to put in place for that. And you guys are expert in this part of my presentation, because that's what most of you probably do already. You've got your business initiatives, and one could be, for example, well, we're going to consolidate all our mobile apps into one single app. That could be a massive, big initiative that you have. Then you could say, well, for that, there are also several business tasks that will need to be performed. And one of them could be, for argument's sake, we want to do that so that we can understand behaviors, customer behaviors as they interact with our applications. We want to get to learn more about their behaviors. You're going to need many data sources to support those specific tasks that are supporting the initiatives, which eventually help you deliver on your strategy. All right, so there's a little bit of alignment that go there, and often, or too often, people start trying to look for the data without having, understood how it's going to help them achieve their business strategy. So it's quite important to do that. And I think it's a natural place. It should be a natural place for most people in the room to start from, because I think, you mainly business people. You're not doing banking today. Like my colleague, Brad likes to say, you're not doing this because you are passionate about the data, right? You're doing this because there's certain objectives that you are in, and data is going to be a means to an end, basically. It's going to help you achieve those specific objectives. So it's quite important to not lose that sight. Well, from there, it's important, once you've identified the data sources, it's important to make sure you have the right team. And there are many things to consider there when you're selecting a right data team. One of the first things I like to look at is to understand the audience that you're going to be servicing. Right, so you will usually take our business teams through some audience segmentation exercise where we get to understand exactly who are the people that we're going to service. And well, if it happens that it's all executives that are on the go and they need information on their mobile devices or whatever. So that's a different skill set that may be needed for that. So once you understand your audience, you are able to understand the type of capabilities that you need to put in place so that you can deliver to their need. Another example could be, you may be servicing a whole, group of analysts who have a lot of business questions that they're trying to answer on a day-to-day basis. So the way you deliver your insight or information to them is not necessarily the same way that you would do it with your operational managers who are running your branches, who have a lot of day-to-day operational decisions that they need to make. So that's a different skill set that's needed and eventually just lost, not least of course, but last thing that you need to think about on this journey is then the tool. What technologies are we going to use in order to deliver these particular capabilities that we have thought of? So that's quite important. Here again, I've seen way too often where people go straight to the tool, to the technology. They make a decision already before they even know what they're going to want to do. They decide on what exactly it is that they would like to implement because there's this other big group or competitors that use this technology and it's been very successful. So it's quite important to look at the fundamentals first and have them in place before you get to deciding on which tool you're going to use on this journey. Well, there's another aspect to this which I'm going to talk about in a couple of slide time. Now, there are some key considerations that I always carry in my bag as we go through this journey. One of them is understanding your data landscape. This, again, I'm going to expand on a little bit on my next and final slide. But it's so important to have a good understanding of what your data landscape looks like. Basically, you should know where your data is. It's good to know that I need this data and this data and this data in order to support my business objective. But very often, when you ask people in the organization where to find the data, it becomes a very difficult exercise because not too many people have very good understanding and mastery of their data landscape. Another key advice from me is really to try and start small. Think big, keep the enterprise mindset, but apply locally. Often, when these data initiatives fail, you find that it's because a lot of people try to bite too much, basically. You basically boil the ocean, the proverbial boiling the ocean. So everybody is trying to do everything, as opposed to trying to, maybe you can try proof of concept, or you build a minimum viable product. Any of these concepts that help you to have a smaller implementation, learn, and have some appetite for failing, but just fail fast. When you've built something small, you are able to improve it over several iterations. You know that one could be not so successful, but then the next iteration you improve on it. But you can only do that when you're thinking about it, in a smaller way. So you're thinking broadly, but you're applying to a smaller area first, and then measure success as you go. Don't wait until right at the end. We must have all our data into whatever our modern data platform. Then you begin to measure how successful this initiative has been. Absolutely not. It's important to measure success as you go and be ready to make changes as you go. It really, I don't want to use some word that have become cliche, but that agile mindset is quite important as you go on this journey. Consider data quality from the beginning. I think that was Brad that also mentioned that. This is absolutely important. Probably number one reason for which a lot of these data initiatives fail lies around the quality of the data. And often people leave it too late to realize that the quality of the data that they are actually banking on, that they are actually hoping to build information product from, is not good enough. The sooner in your data value chain or your information value chain you begin to measure the quality of the data, the sooner you have an understanding of where the quality of the data is or what it looks like, the much better for you it is, and the much cheaper it is to correct. It's a lot more expensive when you realize down the line that the data is actually not of a good quality to try and fix it. So there's a lot of techniques and approaches that you have to implement. There's some basic principles, like validations at the point of capture, trying to put in place some data quality improvement method. There are many technical approaches that I don't think are relevant for this audience today. And then establishing ownership and stewardship for the data. That's another key consideration. And to me, the term that's often used around this consideration in industry is basically your data governance. This speaks to data governance. And that's really about, how you go about managing your data asset. That's very important. How do you go about managing your data asset in such a way that you ensure that you have high quality data, you ensure that there is common understanding of the data, you ensure that data is not just left to IT, because that's a common problem as well. Because technology is used to enable business processes and a lot of data is generated from that. Traditionally, many people have kind of married data with technology. So data is being left to be an IT problem. Absolutely not. I think my invitation today is to say all business people in the room, which I think is the majority of everyone that's attending, get more involved in establishing the ownership and taking responsibility for the data. That's quite important, and I think it links into my next slide. I spoke about understanding the data landscape. Well, the way I go about this approach to make sure that it is absolutely inclusive of the entire your entire business value chain is that I begin by doing exactly that, because this is what most of you will identify with, right? You would look at, well, this is how we do business, and right at the end there is whatever you are in business for, but it's hopefully some kind of profit that you're making out of there, right? But then there's a set of processes that you go through. Each of these processes, not the applications that enable the processes, it's actually the business processes themselves that produce and consume data. So it's important to look at information or data landscape from the perspective of business processes. Okay, you can overlay on this the actual applications that enable the process, but then it will be limiting. It will be a narrow view to start with the application and then identify the data. This is a common mistake that I have found over and over again, right? So very important to start with your business process view, and from there you end up identifying all your key data assets that are produced by each of the business processes. This helps you to understand what data you have. Where is it? So if it's sitting in a particular system, you can then overlay. So whatever your banking value chain looks like, there's a lot of applications in that value chain that produce and consume data. You can then overlay that view on top of this if you wanted to. Where is the data? Where does it originate from? Often data travels through an entire value chain of itself, an information value chain. Where does it originate from? Do we understand what the data means? Very, very important. When we walk into a room and talk about some numbers, do we all walk out of there with the same understanding of what they mean? Or do we have 5 people in the room and 5 different understanding of that specific KPI or metrics actually means? Okay, so very, very important. Is it accessible? Can it be shared? Is there any regulations that prevent me from sharing this? Here in South Africa, all of you would know, we have lot of other regulations, but POPI is one that's making a lot of waves at the moment, protection of personal information. That act, allows you to do certain things and prevent you from doing certain things with personally identifiable information. Have you taken all of that into consideration? Is the data secured? Is it already being exploited? In terms of building information product, how much do we know about this data? So all those are very important questions that that one has to ask themselves, as you considering your data landscape. What I also tend to do is have that in a more visual, graphical representation, like what I have here in the bottom right, and say, well, of the data that we have, how much is internal to our business? How much of it is external to our business? How much are we already exploiting in terms of building information product from, and how much have we not exploited yet? And basically represent it in such a way that at a glance, I can already see the effort needed. Because what often happens is that when you do this for the first time, depending on which level of how far on the journey you are, how far on the data journey you are, you may find that a lot of your data at the beginning is actually sitting on the left side of the y-axis here. So meaning it's external to your organization. And that's not a problem. I think it's Gartner that quoted saying that about 80% of data that is used in decision making for businesses today is actually sitting outside organizations as opposed to inside the organization. That is okay. Everybody is in that same boat. All right. And then once you did, then you have a decision. Do we maybe want to create an area, a modern data platform, where we can very easily and fast ingest that data and start deriving insight from it? And that, whether that's going to be on your premises or whether that's going to be in the cloud, that's a completely different conversation, which is a technical conversation that most of you here would not be interested in. But then having taken the time to go through a proper data landscape, puts you in a position to make such decisions with a high level of confidence. Thank you. That's it from me right now.
Brilliant, Junior. Thank you for that. Passionate and really informative piece of the presentation. While Anton gets his slides together, I just want to say a few quick words. I just wanted to share with the audience today that much of what we're talking about is not really theory and stuff that you see in university or things that companies try to sell you when they're trying to sell you their products and services. What we're sharing today is really practical and innovative advice from people that have actually been in the trenches. And I think something that's particularly innovative is Junior's career, personally, in that quite often one of the challenges in general is the silos between business and IT. And typically, data and BI is sitting in business. Junior is actually pioneering a new approach for the company that he's working with, particularly in the foods business, where he is translating business vision and strategy into the aspects of how does it connect to the data. From strategy to really the discrete enablers of where data-driven decisions can come from. And so, apart from just the approach of how innovative it is to create connections in this way, and not a lot of companies are doing that, they still have these massive divides between business and IT, whereas the actual way forward is to connect those two departments. And I think Junior also has done that brilliantly in the way he describes a data landscape. So most people will describe a data landscape from the perspective of the systems, but the systems are just there to enable your business. So a fundamental shift and a fundamentally different way of looking at this is to look at what is my core business and what data do I need to facilitate running my core business better. That's a game changer. And there are very few companies that are looking at data through that lens. So thank you for that, Junior.